Hello, my name's Liam Bastick, and I'm from a company called SumProduct. We do a lot of work in financial modeling and consulting, and I wanted to show you today the new functions XLOOKUP and XMATCH and how they're going to make your life simpler, whether you're on the VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP side of the fence or indeed index match. Let me go straight into it and explain first of all what the issue is with a particular function I hate. Everyone's a better than average car driver. Everyone's better than average at Excel. I'm not convinced. In fact, one of the things on resumes people go on about is they consider themselves an intermediate or an advanced user if they know how to use VLOOKUP properly. Well, to me, to use VLOOKUP properly, you don't use it. Let me explain. Here's something I prepared earlier. So in this particular one here, I have got VLOOKUP using just the 3 arguments, and those of you more advanced say, there's a fourth, Liam, what are you trying to do? With VLOOKUP here, I've actually got, if I click on this and press the F2 function key, I'm saying, right, I want you to look up the value 2 in the first column of this range. So VLOOKUP is the vertical lookup. It's looking up the value in the first column and returns the corresponding value in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th column along, which is 47. And here's the actual formula there, all looking nice. Problem with this is it promotes hard code. I don't like hard code in formulas because you do things like this. You go in and you insert columns, and suddenly it's no longer taking the 47, it's going for 96 because of the fact it's still sticking to the number 8. Alternatively, I might decide to delete 2 columns. So I go in here instead, and now I get hash ref. Ref, that's unfair. That's no good either. So what I'm going to do is, if I'm going to use VLOOKUP, then I'm going to actually have to change this and use a function here which counts the number of columns. And there is one, it's the Lord of the Rings function. Columns. Get it? Oh, never mind. Look, I've got a terrible sense of humour. You'll never listen to another of my videos again. Here we go, columns F10 to M10. So that counts the number of columns between columns F and column M. You don't need to highlight the whole column, just one row will do fine. That's 8 columns, so it gives you the 47. And now if I insert 2 columns, it still sticks to the 47. And if instead I delete 2 columns, so if we go in here and hit delete, let's try that again with the whole column selected. It's all right. I'm only an amateur. I'm trying to keep my status for the next Olympics. It still works too. So you can see it's still working. All well and good. So then it's fine. Yes? Well, not quite. VLOOKUP isn't particularly happy if data is neither sorted nor unique. So for instance, if I put the number 2 in here, what do you think will happen? So I've got 2 values. Will it pick up the 84 or the 47? Liam, this is so exciting, he lied. Actually, it probably isn't, but here we go, 84 and 47. It picks up the second value. If I put the number 2 in this one, well, what do you think now? Some smart ones say, well, maybe it's still 47 thanks to the first one. No, it's gone and picked up the third one, 80. Oh, I see the pattern now. Takes the last one. Well, you think? If I go in here and press enter, it actually still sticks to the number 80. Do you see the problem I've got here? It's a bit inconsistent in how it behaves. That's all well and good, but the fact is you can get around this if you put as the third argument, the fourth argument, instead of actually just leaving it as it is, there is a fourth argument you can put in here, comma, and you put in here false, and this is looking for an exact match. And then what will happen is if I put in false here, it will put in 84 and deliver back the first value. Okay, that's a bit more consistent, but most people forget there is a fourth argument here, so I have problems with the VLOOKUP function. And similarly, HLOOKUP, the horizontal lookup, which is where you have it in the first row and come back in the other one. There are other issues with VLOOKUP. This is not the only problems you've got with it. Some of the others in here, quite simply, to name them in, is that you can't look up things to the left of the column. So if I wanted to take up a column to the left of here, I can't do it. It defaults to an approximate match. Doesn't like your insertions, as I said before. Can't search from the bottom. If I wanted to actually go and take the bottom one instead, that wouldn't be possible. And it also, it's almost semi-volatile. So volatile is something that calculates when it needn't. If I actually change values in here, even though it's looking up this first and last column, it will actually recalculate. That's ridiculous. So, it's eating up resource on here. There is another function like VLOOKUP that we'll go through. So let me show you another one now. You're probably thinking, if I hate VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP, then the other member of the lookup family, LOOKUP, is also one I'm going to despise. That's not actually the case. LOOKUP's quite an old function, but it's actually quite useful as long as you understand its limitations. What it actually works with, it quite consistently, is with data that's in ascending order. Now, it doesn't have to be strict ascending order. You can have duplicates. So the sequence 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5 is perfectly acceptable. And what lookup will do is look for the final value in that sequence that meets the criteria and deliver the corresponding result of that. I'll explain that with this example in a minute, what I mean. If you look at index match or VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP, it always takes the first value that meets the criteria, but this one will take the last one. So it's a little bit more useful and gives a different way of the story. So lookup doesn't necessarily get replaced by index match, for example, because it actually will look for the largest value less than or equal to what you're looking for, which can mean final, not first. Let me show you an example. Here I've got some data. This is sequentially going up. So when you have time series, always think of the lookup function here. I've got the years 2019, 20, 21, 22, and 2023. It's actually number formatting. It is just the number 2022 plus 1. I've just added the word onwards in number formatting. I don't want to have to put an assumption in every single period. So is there a way to get around it? The answer is yes, there is. You can use the lookup function. So what lookup does is it says, okay, take the lookup value. I want 2019 here. And what I'm going to do is you can actually just highlight the whole range and do that, and it'll take the top row and the bottom row, as long as the number of columns exceeds the number of rows. This isn't advisable because if suddenly you insert rows here, it can flip and take the first column and the last column. So not a good idea to do that. Instead, it's better to do what is taking a vector, where you say this is what I want you to look up in that one, and I want you to return this here. Now, if I copy that across, I'm going to get into a right nightmare because I need to put some absolute referencing in. So I'll hit the F4 button hard because I hate it, then put all these things in. So I've got dollar signs in to anchor my rows and columns. And that will then, as I go across here, 3% and copy it across like this, I get 456777777. Isn't that cool? This is a really useful version of it. Problem with this is if it becomes 2016 instead, you get NA for the first 3 years, because what it's looking for, it says is find me the largest value less than or equal to 2016 in this first row, and then return the corresponding value in this one. Well, that's fine when it's 2019, because the largest value less than or equal to 2019 is 2019, so it returns 3. And when we get to 2025, the largest value less than or equal to 2025 is 2023, so it returns 7. But when we go off the other end of the table, so it's something that's below the minimum value, we get NAs. So we have to put an if statement in here. We go, okay, if open brackets, this cell here, and again, I'll put my dollar signs in, is strictly less than the minimum value. And this, I don't have to put minimum in here because it's got to be in ascending order for this to work. Then take the 3%. So we'll put that revision in. And then what we'll do is we'll copy that across, Control Shift right arrow, Control R. We have something that works, and it's nice and neat. And this is really useful for financial modeling. Another thing that's really useful for financial modeling with lookup is if you're trying to actually aggregate up data from, say, monthly to quarterly or annually, well, you can, if you've got sales from your P&L or cash receipts from your cash flow statement, and you want to aggregate them for the first quarter, you would sum them up. And there's a function, SUMIF, that will do this. The problem is when you get to the balance sheet, you don't want to sum these three values up, 1,000, 1,100, and 1,200. You want to take the final value. I want to take the final value. I want to take the final value, and so on. And this is where lookup comes into its own. It finds the largest value less than or equal to March 16, which is going to be this one because there's 3 duplicates, and returns that value. Largest one, June 16, returns that value. See how simple a formula this is? There's other nightmare ones out there. So lookup's a cool function, even if VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP aren't. So what's XLOOKUP brought to the table that isn't delivered by the lookup, VLOOKUP, and HLOOKUP functions? Well, let's go and take a look. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome XLOOKUP, the new function. It's only in Office 365 Insider version, and not all people who are on Insider get it at the moment, but it's coming out soon. It's what we call in preview mode, and soon it will be generally available. Now, Microsoft has stayed silent as to whether it's going to be in 16, 19, or any of those things. If dynamic arrays is anything to go by, don't think it'll be in there. But Office 365, way to go. I think it's only going to be a couple of months or so before it will be released to the wild, because I think they'll be gauging public reaction, and given how many people have reacted already to various websites, I think it's very positive. So let me show you what all the fuss and clamour is about. So I've got here some letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, and the numbers 7, 4, 2, 4, -3. I think it's all fair to say this is ordered, this isn't. And I'm actually going to be looking up on this to return the letter. Yeah, not the other way, you see. So this is something that VLOOKUP's not going to work with already. But let me just start looking at the syntax of this. So if I type in here XLOOKUP, there it is, XLOOKUP, the new one, and it's got a total of 5 arguments, which doesn't look so good so far as you thought. Well, I thought it was going to try and simplify things, but it's not that bad. The first argument, lookup value, this is required and defines what the value is you want to look up. So here what it is I actually want to look up is the number 7. So let's put that in. The second one then, it says lookup array, but think of it more as a vector. That is either one row or one column. This reference is also required and is the row or the column of the data you're referencing to look up the lookup value. So in here, I'm looking up the number 7 in this here, and let's just start putting some $signs in some of this stuff here so I can copy it in a minute. And then what it wants is the return array or the results array, whatever you want to call it. This is what the corresponding item is you wish to return, and is required as well, even if in some cases it might be the lookup vector. So it doesn't work like SumIf there. Now this doesn't have to be a vector, it can be an array. It can have therefore more than one row and more than one column. But the only stipulation is that the number of rows or columns must equal the number of rows or columns in the lookup vector, but more on that in a bit. So in this particular case, I'm actually going to take this and hit the F4 function key. And then just to show you these other two things, match mode and search mode. So the fourth argument here is match mode, and you can see it gives us the actual 4 options. Now, if you don't put it in, it's assumed it's going to be an exact match, which is the opposite of VLOOKUP, so it's good. -1 is an exact match, or else it's the largest value less than or equal to the lookup value, so it's like lookup. 1 is the exact match, or else the smallest value greater than or equal to the lookup value. And 2 is if you want a wildcard match. Yes, if you want to do not just an approximate match, but an approximate match where you're not even sure how it's spelt or exactly what's in it or what it contains. Now notice I've not mentioned what the sort order is here. So in this particular case here, I'm going to want, in this particular one, let's go for an exact match or the next smaller item, as it says here. So I'll put in -1 to come up with an approximate one here. And there'll be a reason for that in a minute. And then it actually says OK, and then we've got what's called our search mode. Now the default is 1 if you don't put it in, which means search first to last, and -1 is search last to first. But there are 2 other options in here, and excuse the paper rustling, I'm consulting my notes. Number 2 is what is known as a binary search. That's first to last and requires the lookup vector to be sorted. Now, just so you understand what a binary search is, if you're not some sort of IT guru, it's a search algorithm that finds the position of a target value within a sorted array. What it does is it compares the target value to the middle element in the array. If they're not equal, then the half in which the target cannot lie is eliminated, and it repeats the whole process again. So it keeps halving and halving and halving until it finds it quite quickly. Now, in the past, binary searches used to be faster, but with the speed of VLOOKUP improved last September, there's not so much difference in it now. So I would actually say, you know what? I'd stay away from the actual binary searches here and put a different value in. So I can go and say, okay, well, let's just go search first to last. And I could do those. So you put the hard code in, which I'm not keen on. Now, in this case, you may have noticed I've got a table with search mode and match mode in here, so I'm not going to put those in. Instead, what I'm going to do is my match, or if I go back to this one, my match mode is going to be this value here. So I'll anchor that on row. And my search mode here is going to be this one here, anchored on column. So you can see what the difference is as I actually go through all these different types. So if we put this in and put this through, we get all these different things. So exact match, well, we've got here that it works fine in terms of the two values before. So if I'm going on search mode 1 or -1, that's first to last or last to first, it will find the letter A because the 7 only occurs once. If instead I put in 4 here, you'll see what happens is it goes BDDB, because what happens is if you search first to last, then the first number 4 is B, and if you search last to first, it's D. Now, when you get things unordered like this, you can just disregard all this stuff. This is just nonsense because it makes no sense. That's akin to the VLOOKUP stuff I was showing before. If you're looking for approximate matches, though, if I put 3.5 in, you can see that the largest value less than or equal to 3.5 in there is 2, so that gives me C. Whereas if we're doing match type 1, it's looking for the smallest value greater than or equal to 3.5, which is 4, which again is either B or D. And again, if we're going for a wild card, again, it's sort of like an exact match. It won't work. See how it's going through nicely? So let's look at this, comparing it to VLOOKUP here. So I've got in this particular one, I've got some students, and I've got their ID numbers. And if I have a particular student, I can choose, I want to get the actual ID number. I don't need to put all those match modes and search modes in. It's quite simple. I just go XLOOKUP, open brackets, and I'm going to say I want to find this in this range here, and return that there. It's as simple as that. Index match would be more complicated. Nice and simple, 3589. Right, let's have a look at the VLOOKUP counterpart then. If I look at VLOOKUP with 3 arguments and show how this will go, then I will actually get this happen instead. It will go equals VLOOKUP. It says, okay, what is it I'm looking up? I'm looking up here, and I'm going to say, okay, I want it in this table here. And I want it to be the second column it returns, and I'm not going to bother putting the 4th argument in, and I get everything I deserve. 3717 is not even the right answer. It's giving me Toby because it just doesn't get it right when we don't specify. So if I take all this again and I just copy it and I go in here and say, okay, let's do this another time, but this time I'll put in comma false. See, if you start typing FA, that's what I like. It defaults to true here. It's one of the great things. You actually have to type the whole thing in. Very helpful. I get the right answer. But do you see that you've got to put the 2 things in here? XLOOKUP only requires 3 arguments. VLOOKUP requires 4. And you've also got the problem that if I start inserting columns here, the whole thing's going to go to hell. So I need to really use VLOOKUP with the columns function. And up here, HLOOKUP with the rows function. Let's have a look at the HLOOKUP counterpart, where I've just arranged the data in horizontal fashion instead. XLOOKUP still eats this for breakfast, so I just go in here, go XLOOKUP, open brackets. What's the value I'm looking to return? This. And then what I'm going to do is take this data here, so that's what I'm looking for, and return this in here. It's simpler than index match. Put this in like that. Easy, got it in. HLOOKUP with 3 arguments, again, we'll have exactly the same problem as before. So HLOOKUP, find this, comma, in this table, I want the second one, and we'll just highlight this because I know I'm going to have to copy it in a minute anyway. Gives me the wrong answer, because if you're going to do that, you need to put comma false at the end. And a lot of people don't bother doing that. It's model auditor, so it gives you the right answer. If instead I wanted to look up the 1331 and do it the other way, well, XLOOKUP is just as easy. So, okay, I'm going to look up the 1331 in this row and then return it in this one. And I've already done the HLOOKUP function here. No, thank you. Can't do it. This is the power of XLOOKUP over HLOOKUP. Very, 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 very simple. Lookup replacement, I've already shown you these examples. So we've got here the lookup formula that we're showing you here. Here's the XLOOKUP version of it. XLOOKUP requires you to specify the fourth argument as -1. If you don't put it in, if we don't put this in here, what actually happens is when I copy this across, we only get it for the years that are specified. So I need to put in the -1 argument for the actual match mode that we're going through here. So it's finding the largest value less than or equal to what I'm looking for, which is what lookup does. And then therefore you can see lookup is actually shorter. So in this case, I'm still thinking lookup wins because if we need the if solution, the problem I was showing you earlier, it's only fractionally larger than the XLOOKUP one. Look, it doesn't mean XLOOKUP's bad. It just means it's not necessarily right for that particular instance. And I think no function's perfect in all situations. Where lookup does win, though, here is one. Lookup will actually allow you to search on a vector going down with one going across. So we just go lookup in here, and it's just taking this value here. It's saying, right, lookup B in this and return the corresponding value in that. And this can be on another sheet in another workbook that's closed, and it'll all be happy. Whereas if I do XLOOKUP in here, it sort of doesn't work. And this is one I was a bit surprised when I found this out, because this sort of does let down the function at the moment. It gives me hash value. So the way you get round this is if you've got the new Excel, you go in here and you put it in. Now, when I say the new Excel with the Office 365 inside, a dynamic arrays comes in. You can use the transpose function normally in inverted commas. Now, otherwise you have to press Control-Shift-Enter. But in this one, if you just go transpose like this, or transpose it, it gives me the right answer. But clearly, it's a lot longer than the lookup function. So one area where you'd still need to use lookup. So it's not perfect, but it's quite good. Now let's go back to our other features for XLOOKUP. So if I'm selecting a vector here, let's have a look at this particular scenario. I'm just going to shrink it down a little so we can put a little bit more in here. So I've got the exam marks for Graham, Alice, Mitch and Co. Against their subjects that they went. So this is what we call a two-way lookup or a cross match. And we've already got in here the index match solution. So what match does is it says it finds me an exact match. So it's G53 is the subject physics in this column here. So physics is in the third one, and that's going to give me the row number. This one here says find me the student. So find me Mitch in this row, and that's also the third one. So it says in the table H40 to N46, pick the third row, third column, and that's what it's doing here. So if I go in there, I can see that if I now change Mitch to, let's say, maths, it's now 46%, and you can see how this is working. This is what we've got nested functions, index, match, match. If I want to do this with HLOOKUP, now, so HLOOKUP, XLOOKUP I should say, bearing in mind I've got dynamic arrays on this, if I go XLOOKUP over here, just in here, so I want to find Mitch in this column, and then I want it to return these values here. Do you see what I'm saying? That as long as the number of rows is equal, so I've got the number of columns in the row is equal, so columns H to N in both works, this will work. And it spills it out. This is the dynamic array. And so I can now go a second way and do an XLOOKUP on that to find which subject. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So if I take this formula here, and I put this over here into this so you can see how this works. And then I'm going to nest this in a second XLOOKUP. So I'm going to go XLOOKUP, open brackets, and now I'm going to look up maths in this column and then do that on this. That then makes sense what the heck is going on. So if I do that, I get my 46% again. Now, let me just clear this out. So that's gone away. So you can see the formula. This is my nested XLOOKUP function. It's different. It's a two-way one. But if you think, this does a two-way lookup in the way that index match would do it in one. So it's actually quite impressive, and it's shorter than the alternative index match. I mean, give up on trying to do that with VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP. Vector lookups in general, just to show you, we're splitting them. So this is just highlighting this fact that if I were to go equals XLOOKUP and even spell it correctly, I can go in here and say, right, I want to find that in here. Now I need to make sure that my number of columns in this row equals the number of columns in this array. This is why it can be an array. And then you get it spelled out. How cool is that? We can create mini ranges. This is what this particular example is here. I've got some sales for the periods January to March. Let's just shrink this down a minute so you can see I've got sort of January to March, January to December here. And what I want to do is I want to pick for July to October. And actually what I've done here is, you may notice, if I change this here, make it May, this one allows me to also go May. And that's because what I did here, I've got an array I've hidden. If I just go in here and let's color it red for a minute so you can see what it is. That's a spilled array. And if I were to go equals and highlight this here, do you see how it puts in there equals H101 hash? That's the dynamic array reference for defining a range. Now you can't put in formulas like this into data validation, but if I go Alt DL for data validation and bring the dialog box in so that you can see it on screen, you will see here what I've done is created a list and I've made it reference equals H101 hash, and that actually is making it nice and cool that it will actually work. So that's pretty cool on its own. Let's make that all white again so that it's all hidden. And I'm having to make it white rather than using the number formatting semicolon, 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 so that when you click on the data validation, it's not invisible. So the total sales here is therefore going to be the sum. And this is where I'm actually going to define a range, because XLOOKUP works like index, that it can also define a range. So I'm going to say, okay, I want you to look up in here this month in that range here and return this here. Now, if I do that, I put a colon in and then do XLOOKUP again, it now knows it needs to be references that I'm doing. So I'm now going to go this one, comma, this data here, if I can get this in. I love it when it's a bit tiny, it's a bit fiddlier with the mouse. People say, why use the keyboard then? But see, well, maybe I should. You know what? I'm going to carry on doing this way. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. So that's actually put in that. So the first range here has actually worked out that it's going from May, and it's going to pick, and this one's working out it's going to October, and it's picking up the sales in there. So if I press enter now, that gives me 40,627. And if I sum these here, that's 40,627. How cool is that? We can also search from the end. So I want to go Alice, and I want to get for Alice her, so she actually makes payments on certain dates. She's made one here, she made another one here, and that's her final one here. That's the one I want to pick up. What was the last one? So I'm going to go equals XLOOKUP, open brackets, I'm looking for Alice here, and I'm going to go in here, I'll make this absolute because I'm going to use this again in a second, and I want to find in this range here, make that one absolute, and then I'm going to pick here, and I'm going to just nail that down to rows. 8th of January is the first one. How do I make it the last one? Well, what I have to do is if I go in here, it's not about exact matches, it's going here, it's the search mode. I want to search last to first, so I'll double click on that one. If I press enter, I now get the final one, 24th of June. Now if I just copy and paste special as formulas, so Alt ESF, Alt ESF, Liam, Alt ES, and then I'm going to go in here to formulas and click OK. We've got that in here. It's now picked up that last one. See, nice and easy. I'll come back to exact matches in a minute. Let's go and have a look at wildcards first. So I've got here, let's make this a bit bigger again so we can see it. I've got different ones. I'm looking for J question mark N X asterisk N asterisk. So what the question marks is, I'm looking for a wildcard character that is exactly one character in length, whereas the actual asterisk means I'm looking for a wildcard that can be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, it can be 0 characters in length. So if I want the first one, I'm just going to go equals XLOOKUP, Oh, it'd be nice to be able to spell today, wouldn't it? Open brackets, let's take this 4, and I'm going to look in this data here, make that absolute, and I want to return a value in here. And then it wants for the actual match mode, I want 2. So I'll take that one, and that will pick up the number 4. If I now do the same thing, so I'll just copy all of this and put that in here. To make it go from the bottom up, I have to also change the search mode. So it's just add in the 5th argument, which I want it to be search last to first. See, I'm never going near the other ones here, and that will give me the other one. How cool is that? Right, so that's wildcard. So how do I do an exact match? So here I've got our company SumProduct. We've got some exact matches in here. How do I go? And I want it to be exactly like that, SumProduct with a space. I'm picking it in first match and last match. Well, this time you actually are putting the search in memory. So I'm going to say I'm searching for true, and then I'm going to use the exact function in Excel, if I can spell it. And what that is, it's saying, right, I want it to be text 1 and text 2. So I'm going to go in here. I want it to be this data here, I should say, comma that. So it's going to go through and see, well, if they're exactly the same to be a true, and if not, it's a false. So it's going to go here, false, true, false, 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 true, false. And therefore it's going to pick those up, and then the corresponding one will be here. And I can do this because it's a spill range here, and that will give me position 2. If I take this now and go Control C, and you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to put it in. That I need it to go last to first. Well, let's just go through. I don't want this one, so I'll just leave that as it is. I just want the search last to first there. And now I've got the bottom 1, 2, 5, 6 as well. How long would these things take you to do? Pretty cool, don't you think? So look, I spent all my time here on XLOOKUP. There is one other function, XMATCH. So what match does is it's telling you the position of something in a list. So I've got it here. It works a bit like the match function, except it's got more arguments. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just show you quickly with this is equals match, and it's got four arguments. It's got 3 arguments, matches, I should say. It's got the lookup value, the lookup array, and the match type. You want an exact match or an approximate match. XMatch, on the other hand, the new function, you put this in, has the lookup value, the lookup array, then the match mode and the search mode, which are the same as before. So it's again, the lookup value is the required and defines what value you want to look up. The lookup vector is the reference is required in the row or column of data you're looking to try and find your lookup value. And match mode is exactly as before. 0 is the exact match, -1 is the exact match, or else the largest value less than or equal to the lookup value, whereas 1 is the exact match, or else the smallest value greater than or equal to the lookup value, and 2 is wildcard. Whereas the search modes are 1, the default first to last, -1 is last to first, 2 is your binary search again, first to last, and -2 is going the other way. To be honest, I'm not really going to use the binary searches, are you? I think. So we're going to look up the value, -6.7, if I can click on the right cell, comma, this vector, comma, and then we can actually put in the search mode if we want to. I'm not going to bother with the, so I will put the match mode actually, and then we'll put in the search mode, and I'll press that, and it gives me the number 6. And I can toggle with these and put the different values in to show what it will happen if you change it to other ones. It's pretty straightforward. Hopefully you found this all useful. So I hope you found this medium-sized video useful. I've tried to show you a few cool things that are coming up with XLOOKUP and XMATCH. Not out in all versions of Excel. As I say, this is confirmed for Office 365 Insider, and even then you've got about a 50-50 chance of getting it for the time being. But it is going to propagate. It's going to go through the whole of Insider, and eventually it will be what's called generally available and will be in 365. Whether it's going to be in Office 2016, 2019, other versions for the Mac, etc., remains to be seen. But let's be honest, if it's like dynamic arrays, Microsoft is trying to push everyone towards the subscription model, I think. But this could be a good reason for going there. Backwards compatibility, things like that, don't know at the moment. We will see, but this is hot off the press. It's very, very useful, XLOOKUP in particular. As I say, I hope you enjoyed the session. If you enjoyed this, my name's Liam Bastick. My contact details are on here, and if you didn't, my name's Donald Trump. Good night.